The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from 100 different worlds. Lights from distant stars shone through the massive windows, casting colorful patterns across the polished floor. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood with his small team of humans, feeling out of place among the ancient alien civilizations that surrounded them. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had only made first contact 20 years ago, and most species still saw them as children playing at diplomacy. Jake had spent the last 5 years trying to prove that humans deserved a seat at the table, but progress was slow. The older empires looked down on them, treating every human achievement as a lucky accident. Today was supposed to change that. The Velkari Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, had requested this meeting. The Velkari were reptilian beings, tall and graceful, with scales that shimmered in shades of green and gold. They controlled dozens of star systems and had military might that few could challenge. If they wanted peace with humanity, it would be a major step forward. Emperor Thaxavon entered the chamber with his entourage. His scales were deep emerald, marked with golden patterns that showed his royal bloodline. Behind him walked his children and advisors, all dressed in flowing ceremonial robes. Jake noticed how they held themselves with absolute confidence, as if they owned the very air they breathed. But there was one figure who walked differently. A younger female Velkari moved with her head slightly bowed, her scales a lighter shade of green. She wore simpler robes than the others, though they were still beautiful by human standards. Her name was Princess Ziraeth, and Jake had read about her in the briefing documents. She was the youngest daughter of the Emperor, rarely mentioned in official records. The Emperor raised his hand, and the council chamber fell silent. His voice was deep and commanding as he spoke through the translation device that allowed all species to understand each other. Humanity has asked for stronger bonds with the Velkari Empire, he began. We have considered this request carefully. Today, we offer a traditional solution to unite our peoples, a marriage between our houses. Jake felt his stomach drop. Political marriages were common among alien species, but humanity had hoped to build relationships through trade and cultural exchange instead. Still, he kept his face neutral and listened. We offer our beloved daughter, Princess Ziraeth, to join with your ambassador, the Emperor continued. This union will symbolize the friendship between our kinds. Several of the Velkari nobles behind the Emperor seemed to be struggling not to laugh. They covered their mouths with their clawed hands, their eyes shining with barely contained amusement. Jake noticed this, but didn't understand what was funny. Lisa Martin, the human xenobiologist on his team, leaned close and whispered, "Something's wrong here. This doesn't match Velkari protocols." Jake nodded slightly, but had no choice except to continue. The Emperor was watching him, waiting for a response. To refuse would be a massive insult, possibly destroying any chance of good relations with the Velkari Empire. To accept meant binding himself to a woman he had never met, for reasons he didn't fully understand. He looked at Princess Ziraeth. She stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion. But her eyes met his for just a moment, and he saw something there. Resignation, sadness, maybe even apology. She knew something he didn't. The human delegation is honored by this generous offer, Jake said carefully. We accept this union as a symbol of peace and friendship between our peoples. The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. The ceremony will be held tomorrow. Prepare yourselves. As the formal meeting ended and the various delegations began to leave, Jake tried to approach Princess Ziraeth, but her guards quickly moved her away, and the Velkari nobles formed a wall between them. He heard one of them laughing openly now, speaking in their own language to another. Lisa pulled out her translation device and frowned as she listened to what they were saying. Her face went pale. Jake, We need to talk. Privately. Right now. They found an empty conference room, and Lisa immediately pulled up her data pad. I've been researching Velkari culture more deeply. There's something they're not telling us about Princess Ziraeth. What is it? She's been declared infertile. In their culture, that's one of the worst things that can happen to a royal. They have a strict caste system based on breeding. An infertile princess has no value to them. They're basically giving us their trash and laughing about it. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. They're using her as an insult to humiliate us and to get rid of her. They probably think we'll be shamed when we can't produce an heir. It makes both humanity and the princess look bad. It's actually pretty clever from their perspective. Jake sat down heavily in one of the chairs. He thought about Princess Ziraeth's sad eyes, the way she had walked with her head down. How long had she been treated as worthless? How many times had she been mocked and pushed aside? Does she know? He asked. Of course she knows. She's lived with it her whole life. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he stood up. We're going through with it. Lisa looked shocked. What? But Jake, they're making fools of us. Maybe. Or maybe this is a chance to show them what humanity is really about. He looked at his friend and colleague. We don't measure people's worth by whether they can have children. My own sister can't have kids, and she's one of the best people I know. If the Velkari think this will embarrass us, they're wrong. And Princess Ziraeth? She deserves better than to be a punchline to a cruel joke. If we back out now, it just confirms to her that she's worthless. I won't do that to her. Lisa studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we need to be prepared for whatever comes next. The Velkari won't be happy if this doesn't go according to their plan. Let them be unhappy, Jake said. We're going to treat her with respect and dignity. Maybe we can't change her biology, but we can change how she's treated. That has to count for something. The next day, the marriage ceremony took place in the council chambers. It was formal and cold, with the Velkari nobles watching like they were attending a comedy show rather than a wedding. Princess Ziraeth spoke her vows in a quiet voice, never looking up. Jake spoke his clearly, and when he took her hand, he squeezed it gently. She looked up at him in surprise, and he smiled. It was a small gesture, but it was genuine. Whatever the Velkari intended, he would make sure she knew that at least one person saw her as more than a joke. The ceremony ended, and they were officially married. As they walked out together, Jake heard the Velkari nobles laughing behind them. They thought they had won. They thought they had humiliated humanity and disposed of an embarrassment at the same time. They had no idea how wrong they were. The transport ship carrying Jake and Ziraeth to New Olympia was quiet for most of the journey. The human colony world was 3 days away through the network of jump gates that connected the galaxy. Ziraeth spent most of her time in her assigned quarters, coming out only for meals. When she did appear, she was polite but distant, speaking only when spoken to. Jake didn't push her. He could see the walls she had built around herself, protection against years of mockery and pain. Instead, he focused on making sure she was comfortable, asking about her food preferences and whether the temperature was right for her. Small things that showed he cared about her well-being. Lisa Martin was also on the ship, traveling with them to help with the cultural transition. She had spent the journey reading everything she could find about Velkari biology and society. The more she learned, the angrier she became at how Ziraeth had been treated. On the second day, Lisa knocked on Ziraeth's door with a tray of different foods. Princess, I thought you might like to try some human dishes. I wasn't sure what you'd enjoy, so I brought variety. Ziraeth opened the door hesitantly. She looked surprised that anyone would think about her preferences. That is kind of you, Dr. Martin. Please call me Lisa. She smiled warmly. May I come in? I'd love to learn more about your people if you're willing to share. Something in Lisa's genuine interest made Ziraeth lower her guard slightly. She invited the human woman inside, and they spent the next hour talking. Not about politics or biology, but about simple things. Lisa told stories about growing up on Earth, about the ocean and mountains, and the feeling of rain. Ziraeth found herself relaxing, even smiling a few times. "Your world sounds beautiful," Ziraeth said quietly. "I have never been allowed to explore much. Princesses of my position are kept close to the palace." "Your position?" Lisa asked gently. Ziraeth's smile faded. "You know what I mean. The defective princess. The one who brings shame to the bloodline." "You're not defective," Lisa said firmly. "You're just different, and there's nothing wrong with being different." "In my culture, there is everything wrong with it." Lisa leaned forward. "Then maybe your culture is wrong about this. Maybe being able to have children isn't what makes someone valuable. My friend's sister, Megan, she can't have children either. But she designed half the engines on this ship. She saved thousands of lives with her work. Does that sound worthless to you?" Ziraeth stared at her. "A human who cannot breed is still respected? Of course. We value people for who they are, not just what they can do biologically. Artists, teachers, engineers, doctors, all kinds of people contribute to society in different ways." It was a completely new concept to Ziraeth. She had spent her entire life being told that her inability to produce heirs made her useless. The idea that she could have value beyond that was almost too strange to believe. When they arrived at New Olympia, Ziraeth was amazed by what she saw. The colony world was beautiful, with carefully planned cities that blended into the natural landscape. Humans lived alongside several other alien species who had chosen to settle there. Everyone seemed busy and purposeful, working together on various projects. Jake had arranged for them to have a comfortable home on the outskirts of the main city, with gardens and privacy. It wasn't a palace, but it was peaceful and bright. He showed Ziraeth to her own room, making it clear she had her own space and didn't owe him anything. "This marriage can be whatever you want it to be," he told her. "We're partners in this, but I'm not going to pressure you for anything. You set the boundaries and I'll respect them." Ziraeth didn't know what to say. She had expected demands, expectations, perhaps even anger when he fully understood what her infertility meant. Instead, he was giving her freedom and choice. The weeks passed, and slowly, Ziraeth began to explore her new life. Lisa visited often, introducing her to other scientists and researchers. Ziraeth discovered that humans were intensely curious about everything, always asking questions and seeking to understand. They asked her about Velkari history, art, and philosophy, not just biology and politics. Jake worked during the day at the diplomatic offices, but his evenings were spent at home. He would cook dinner, often trying to recreate Velkari dishes with varying success. His attempts were sometimes terrible, which made Ziraeth laugh, a sound she hadn't made in years. He didn't mind being laughed at. He just enjoyed seeing her smile. They began talking more, sharing stories about their lives. Jake told her about growing up on Earth, about his family and his work. He had a younger brother named Chris, who was a pilot, and his sister Megan, who he spoke about with obvious love and pride. Ziraeth told him about the Velkari homeworld, about the ancient libraries she loved to read in, and the strategic games she played. "You're interested in military strategy?" Jake asked, surprised. "I studied it extensively. I thought perhaps if I could not be useful in one way, I could be useful in another. But my family never took my ideas seriously. They said strategy was not for someone like me." "That's their loss. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The Human Military Council is always looking for new perspectives." Ziraeth felt something warm in her chest. He actually wanted to hear what she had to say. He valued her mind. As months passed, The partnership between them deepened into genuine friendship. Jake found himself looking forward to coming home each day, to hearing Ziraeth's thoughts on whatever she had been reading or learning. She had a sharp mind and a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh. Ziraeth discovered that she enjoyed his company more than she ever expected. He was kind without being pitying, interested without being invasive. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinions and actually listening to her answers. For the first time in her life, she felt seen as a whole person. One evening, they were sitting in the garden watching the sunset. New Olympia had 2 suns, and when they set together, the sky turned shades of purple and orange that took Ziraeth's breath away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm broken, for making this arrangement into something bearable, even good." Jake turned to look at her. "You were never broken, Ziraeth. Your people just couldn't see what you really are." "And what is that?" "Someone brilliant, strong, and worth knowing. I feel lucky that I get to spend time with you." Ziraeth felt tears forming in her eyes, something Velkari rarely did. She had never expected kindness, never expected to be valued. And now, sitting in this garden on an alien world, she realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling in love with her husband. She didn't tell him that night. She was too afraid, too uncertain. What if he didn't feel the same way? What if he was just being kind because of duty? But over the next few weeks, she noticed small things. The way he smiled when she entered a room, how he found excuses to be near her, the gentle way he touched her hand when passing her something. One night, after they had been married for nearly 6 months, she found the courage to kiss him. He kissed her back, gentle and careful, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. What started as political arrangement had become something real, something neither of them had planned, but both wanted. They became husband and wife in truth that night, not expecting anything except connection and intimacy. Neither of them imagined that anything could come from it except closeness. After all, the best Velkari doctors had declared it impossible. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. Ziraeth woke up feeling strange. It had been happening for a few weeks now, this odd sensation in her body that she couldn't quite explain. She felt tired all the time, even after a full night's sleep. The smell of Jake's morning coffee, which she usually enjoyed, now made her feel sick. Her scales were changing color in patterns she had never seen before, with hints of blue appearing among the green. She didn't think much of it at first. Perhaps it was stress, or maybe she was getting sick with some human illness. But when the symptoms continued, Jake insisted she see a doctor. Lisa Martin had a medical scanner at her research lab, so they arranged for Ziraeth to come in for a basic check. Lisa ran the scanner over Ziraeth's body, watching the readings on her screen. Suddenly, she froze. Her eyes went wide, and she ran the scan again, and then a third time. Her hands were shaking. "Lisa, what's wrong?" Jake asked, worried by her expression. Lisa looked up at them, her face showing complete shock. "Ziraeth, when was your last breeding cycle?" "I don't have breeding cycles," Ziraeth said quietly. "That's part of my condition. My body never developed that way." "That's what I thought, but—" Lisa turned the screen so they could see it. "These readings are very clear. Ziraeth, you're pregnant." The room went absolutely silent. Ziraeth stared at the screen, unable to process what she was hearing. It wasn't possible. Every doctor in the Velkari Empire had examined her. They had all agreed her body could not create or carry offspring. It was a biological impossibility. "There must be a mistake," Ziraeth whispered. "The scanner is wrong." "I've run it 3 times. I'm not wrong." Lisa's voice was gentle but certain. "You're about 2 months along. The embryo is healthy and developing normally." Jake sat down heavily in a chair. He looked at Ziraeth, then at Lisa, then back at Ziraeth. How is this possible? I don't know, Lisa admitted. This shouldn't be possible according to everything we know about Velkari biology, but it's happening. Ziraeth touched her stomach with a shaking hand. Inside her, a life was growing, a life she had been told she could never create. She felt joy, terror, and disbelief all at once. Tears ran down her face, something she had only recently learned to let herself do. Jake moved to her side immediately, taking her hand. Are you okay? What do you need? I don't know, she said, her voice breaking. I never dreamed. Lisa gave them a moment, then spoke carefully. We need to understand what's happening here. This could be important, not just for you, but for science. May I do some more detailed studies? Ziraeth nodded, still too overwhelmed to speak much. Over the next few days, Lisa worked with her colleague, Ryan Foster, a specialist in genetics. They ran every test they could think of, comparing human and Velkari DNA, studying how the embryo was developing. What they found was extraordinary. Human DNA is like nothing we've ever seen, Ryan explained to Jake and Ziraeth during a meeting at the lab. Most species in the galaxy have very rigid genetic structures. They evolved on their homeworlds and stayed relatively stable. But humans are different. Different how? Jake asked. Your species had to adapt constantly on Earth. Ice ages, environmental changes, new diseases, humans evolved to be flexible. Your DNA has this amazing property where it can recognize compatible genetic material from other species and actually modify itself to bridge the gap. Lisa pulled up a holographic image showing the genetic combination. When Jake's genetic material encountered Ziraeth's reproductive cells, instead of just failing like it should have, the human DNA rewrote parts of itself. It built a bridge, making compatibility where there should have been none. So humans can breed with Velkari? Ziraeth asked, still trying to understand. It's looking that way, but it's probably not just Velkari. We think humans might be compatible with dozens of species, maybe more. We need to do more research, but the implications are enormous. Ryan nodded. Think about it. There are species across the galaxy that struggle with low birth rates, genetic diseases, or limited diversity. If human genetic flexibility can help with that, it changes everything. Jake felt the weight of what they were saying. Other species are going to want access to this. They're going to see humans as a resource. Some will, Lisa agreed, but others will see it as an opportunity for true partnership and unity. Either way, when word gets out about this pregnancy, everything changes. That was the problem. Word would get out. It had to. They couldn't hide a pregnancy forever, and the Velkari Empire would have to be informed. Emperor Thaxavon would not be happy. Jake contacted the Human Diplomatic Corps, explaining the situation. Within hours, messages were flying between worlds. The human government wanted to handle this carefully, but they also knew they couldn't hide such important news. 3 days later, an official announcement was made to the Galactic Council. Princess Ziraeth, who had been declared infertile by the Velkari Empire, was pregnant with a human Velkari hybrid child. The news exploded across the galaxy. The Velkari response was immediate and angry. Emperor Thaxavon sent a furious message demanding that Ziraeth return to the Velkari homeworld immediately. He claimed the pregnancy was impossible and that humans must have used some kind of trick or technology. He insisted that the child, if it really existed, belonged to the Velkari Empire by right of bloodline. Prince Korvan, the Emperor's oldest son and heir, was even more aggressive. He gave interviews to galactic news services, calling the pregnancy a human deception designed to embarrass the Empire. He demanded that Ziraeth be seized if she didn't return voluntarily. Other species watched with intense interest. Some supported the Velkari claim based on traditional bloodline laws. Others sided with humanity, arguing that Ziraeth had made her own choice and should be protected. Scientific communities across the galaxy wanted access to the research data, wanting to understand this genetic compatibility. Ziraeth herself was terrified. She knew her father's rage, knew what he was capable of when he felt his authority was challenged. She had been nothing to him when she was just a failed princess, but now she carried something valuable, something that could change the power structure of his empire. He would not let that go easily. "They're going to try to take me back," she told Jake one night. "And they're going to take our child." "I won't let that happen," Jake said firmly. "You're a citizen of New Olympia now. You have rights, and our child is not property. You don't know what the Empire is capable of. And they don't know what humanity is capable of when we're protecting our own." Lisa and Ryan continued their research, working quickly to document everything they were learning. They knew this information could be powerful, could change everything, but they also knew it needed to be handled carefully and ethically. Ziraeth's pregnancy progressed, and with each passing day, the political situation grew more tense. The Galactic Council called for a special session to address the situation. Delegations from across the galaxy would gather to decide Ziraeth's fate and the fate of her unborn child. Jake held Ziraeth close one evening as they watched news reports about the upcoming council session. Ships were gathering from hundreds of worlds. Some came in support, others in opposition. The entire galaxy was watching. "Whatever happens," Jake said softly, "we face it together, you, me, and our child." Ziraeth placed her hand over his on her stomach, where their impossible baby grew. "Together," she agreed. Neither of them knew what the council would decide. Neither of them knew if the Velkari Empire would accept any ruling that went against them. War was possible. Many things were possible, but one thing was certain. The joke the Velkari had played on humanity had backfired in ways they never could have imagined. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from over 200 species filled every seat, with more watching through holographic connections from across the galaxy. Security was tight, with ships from a dozen different military forces patrolling the space around the station. Everyone knew this session could determine whether the galaxy would have peace or war. Jake stood with Ziraeth at the center of the chamber. She was 5 months pregnant now, her condition visible even through her robes. Her hand rested protectively on her swollen belly, and Jake stood close beside her, ready to support her if needed. Emperor Thaxvon entered with an impressive delegation. His scales gleamed under the lights, and his expression was cold with fury. Behind him walked Prince Korvan and a dozen other high-ranking Velkari officials. They moved like they owned the room, confidence radiating from every step. The council leader, an ancient being from the Archon species, called the session to order. Her voice echoed through the chamber with authority that came from thousands of years of mediation. "We are here to address the matter of Princess Ziraeth of the Velkari Empire and her offspring. Emperor Thaxvon has requested the return of his daughter and claims the child as property of the Velkari bloodline. Ambassador Morrison and the human delegation contest this claim. We will hear from both sides." Emperor Thaxvon spoke first. His voice was powerful and commanding. "Princess Ziraeth is a daughter of the Imperial House. By the ancient laws of bloodline succession, she and any offspring she bears belong to the Empire. These laws have governed our people for 10,000 years. The humans knew this when they accepted the marriage arrangement." "The humans deceived us," Prince Korvan added, stepping forward. "They used unknown technology to create this pregnancy. It is impossible by natural means. This is genetic manipulation designed to humiliate our empire and steal our bloodline." Several species in the chamber nodded. Traditional bloodline laws were common across the galaxy. Many agreed that children belong to the family line, regardless of other circumstances. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward to respond. The pregnancy occurred through completely natural means. Dr. Lisa Martin and her team have documented everything. There was no technology, no manipulation. What happened was the result of natural human genetic compatibility. Impossible, the Emperor spat. Our finest doctors examined my daughter. She was infertile. There is no natural explanation. Lisa Martin stood up from the human delegation area. With respect, Emperor Thaxavon, your doctors were correct about Velkari biology. Princess Ziraeth could not become pregnant through Velkari genetic material, but human DNA operates differently than any species previously studied. We have the research to prove it. She projected holographic data into the center of the chamber, showing the genetic compatibility findings. Scientists from various species leaned forward, fascinated by what they were seeing. Lisa explained the human genetic flexibility, the ability to bridge compatibility gaps. This isn't about technology or tricks, she continued. This is about human evolutionary history creating something unique. And preliminary research suggests this compatibility extends beyond just Velkari. Humans might be compatible with dozens of species across the galaxy. The chamber erupted in noise. Species that struggled with declining populations, genetic diseases, or limited diversity suddenly saw hope. Others saw threat. The implications were staggering. The Archon Council leader called for silence. The biological explanation is noted, but the question remains about custody and citizenship. Princess Ziraeth, you have said nothing. What is your position? Ziraeth had been silent throughout the proceedings, but now she stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger as she spoke. My father calls me his daughter, but he has never treated me as one. When I was declared infertile, I became nothing to my family. I was mocked, pushed aside, and eventually given away as a joke to embarrass the humans. I was supposed to be trash that would humiliate everyone involved. The Emperor's scales darkened with anger, but she continued. But the humans did not treat me as trash. Ambassador Morrison treated me with respect, with kindness. He valued my mind, my thoughts, my worth as a person beyond my ability to reproduce. For the first time in my life, I was seen as whole. Tears ran down her face now. I did not choose to be born into the imperial family. I did not choose to be infertile by Velkari standards. But I did choose to stay with humans. I chose to become a citizen of New Olympia. I chose this life because here, I am not a failure. I am simply a person. She placed both hands on her belly. My child is not property, not of the Empire, not of anyone. My child is a living being who deserves to be loved and valued, regardless of political concerns or bloodline politics. I will not let my child grow up as I did, told that they are worthless unless they serve some political purpose. The chamber was absolutely silent. Species across the galaxy watched through their screens. Ziraeth's words resonated with oppressed groups throughout the Velkari Empire and beyond. Lower castes who had been told they were lesser. People who had been judged by rigid social structures. Her courage in speaking out gave voice to millions who had suffered in silence. The princess makes her choice clear, the Archon leader said. But Emperor Thaxavon, you still demand her return? She is of the imperial bloodline. The law is clear. Then let me be equally clear, Jake said, his voice hard. Ziraeth is a citizen of New Olympia. She has legal rights under our laws and under Galactic Treaty. To take her by force would be an act of war against humanity. You dare threaten the Velkari Empire? Prince Korvan growled. I dare to protect my wife and child, and humanity stands with me. The human ambassador to the council, an older woman named Patricia Shaw, stood up. The human government has made its position clear. Any attempt to seize Ziraeth or her child will be considered an act of war. We will defend our citizens with every resource at our disposal. Bold words for such a young species, the Emperor said coldly. Before anyone else could speak, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The security chief's voice came over the communication system. Multiple Velkari warships have just entered the system. They're demanding the immediate surrender of Princess Ziraeth. The chamber descended into chaos. On the viewing screens, everyone could see the Velkari battle fleet. Dozens of ships, weapons powered and ready. At their head was a massive carrier commanded by Prince Korvan himself. The human defense fleet, led by Captain Brandon Cole on the carrier Liberty's Dawn, moved to intercept. Other species began evacuating their delegations, fearful of being caught in a battle. The galaxy teetered on the edge of war. Emperor Thaxvon looked at Jake with cold satisfaction. "You cannot fight us. Return my daughter and the child, and we will let humanity keep its dignity." "No," Jake said firmly. Ziraeth grabbed his arm. "Jake, I won't let you start a war for me." "This isn't just about you anymore," he said gently. "This is about the right of all people to choose their own fate. If we back down now, every oppressed person in the galaxy loses hope." The Archon leader raised her hands. "We will find a peaceful solution. No one will fire weapons in council space." But everyone could see the truth. The Velkari fleet was ready to fight. The human ships were outnumbered but holding position. One wrong move, one trigger-happy commander, and the entire sector would explode into violence. In that tense moment, something unexpected happened. A message came through from the Velkari homeworld, not from the Emperor's palace, but from the lower city districts. Then another message, and another. Videos of Velkari citizens, mostly from the lower castes, speaking out in support of Princess Ziraeth. Thousands of them, then millions. "Stand strong, Princess," they said. "You speak for all of us." The Emperor watched the messages with growing alarm. His control over his empire depended on the rigid caste system. If the lower castes began demanding change, demanding to be valued as individuals, his power would crack, and it was all because his discarded daughter had found the courage to speak her truth. The council leader saw the opening. "Emperor Thaxvon, the galaxy is watching. Your own people are watching. How you respond now will define your empire's future." The Emperor stood frozen, calculating. His fleet waited for his command. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The standoff lasted for 3 days. The Velkari fleet remained in position, weapons ready but not firing. The human ships held their ground, refusing to back down. Messages continued to pour in from across the galaxy, species taking sides, arguing positions, demanding peace or preparing for war. But the most important messages came from within the Velkari Empire itself. The lower castes had found their voice, inspired by Princess Ziraeth's courage. They flooded communication channels with demands for reform, for respect, for the right to be valued beyond their breeding status. Protests spread across 3 major Velkari worlds, peaceful but insistent. Emperor Thaxvon watched his empire beginning to crack. His advisors urged him to use force to restore order, but he knew that would only make things worse. The entire galaxy was watching, judging his every move. If he started a war over his rejected daughter, he would be seen as a tyrant. If he used violence against his own people, the lower castes might rise up completely. On the 3rd day, the Archon Council leader called for a final mediation session. This time, she brought representatives from 20 neutral species to help negotiate. The session was broadcast live across the galaxy. "We have reached a point where both war and peace are possible," she began. "Emperor Thaxvon, what the galaxy needs to know is simple. Will you respect the rights of your daughter to choose her own path? Or will you force this conflict to its terrible conclusion?" The Emperor sat silently for a long moment. His scales had darkened with stress, and he looked older than he had just days ago. Finally, he spoke. "Princess Ziraeth has made her position clear. She wishes to remain with the humans. He paused, and everyone held their breath. The Velkari Empire will not contest her citizenship on New Olympia. She and her child will not be taken by force. Relief swept through the chamber, but the Emperor wasn't finished. However, the child carries Velkari blood. We request visitation rights and the right to know our own bloodline. This is not negotiable. Ziraeth looked at Jake, who nodded. They had discussed this possibility. Complete separation from the Velkari Empire wasn't realistic, and it wasn't necessarily fair to their child either. Heritage mattered, even when complicated. Agreed, Ziraeth said. But visits will happen on New Olympia on our terms, and only if they are peaceful and respectful. Our child will know their Velkari heritage, but they will grow up free to choose their own path. The Archon leader turned to the broader assembly. And what of the larger implications? This genetic compatibility changes much. How will the galaxy respond? Patricia Shaw, the human ambassador, stood up. Humanity proposes the creation of an interspecies family protection protocol. Any species who wishes to explore genetic compatibility with humans must do so with full consent, ethical oversight, and protection for all individuals involved. People are not resources to be exploited. Additionally, Lisa Martin added, we will establish a research institute dedicated to studying this compatibility. The findings will be shared openly with the scientific community, with strict ethical guidelines. Species from across the galaxy began pledging support for these proposals. Some had noble intentions, genuinely interested in solving population or genetic problems. Others clearly saw economic or political opportunities. But the framework was established. Humans would share this gift, but not without protections and principles. The Velkari fleet withdrew from the system. Prince Korvan sent a final angry message, but even he recognized that the battle was lost. The Empire would need to adapt or face internal collapse. The lower castes were no longer willing to accept their place in the rigid hierarchy. Jake and Ziraeth returned to New Olympia as the galaxy continued to process everything that had happened. Messages arrived daily from species interested in establishing cultural exchanges, research partnerships, or diplomatic relationships with humanity. What had begun as a cruel joke had transformed humanity's position in the galactic community completely. 3 months later, Ziraeth gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The delivery was difficult, as her body had never been designed for this purpose, but human medical technology and Velkari physicians working together ensured both mother and child survived. They named her Kira Morrison. She was beautiful, with soft scales in patterns of green and blue, large brown eyes that looked up with curiosity, and tiny hands that gripped her parents' fingers with surprising strength. The doctors marveled at her hybrid vigor, how she seemed to have taken the strengths of both species. Lisa came to visit in the hospital, bringing flowers and crying happy tears when she held the baby. She's perfect. Absolutely perfect. She's a miracle, Ziraeth said softly, looking at her daughter with wonder. They told me I was broken, that I could never have this. But here she is. You were never broken, Jake said, kissing his wife's forehead. The world just needed to catch up to what you already were. Over the following weeks, visitors came from across the galaxy to see the first human Velkari hybrid. Scientists wanted to study her development, though Jake and Ziraeth limited access to protect their daughter's privacy. Diplomats came to offer congratulations and discuss the new protocols being established. Most surprisingly, Empress Sevara, Ziraeth's mother, sent a private message requesting permission to visit. She didn't come with the Emperor or with any official delegation. She came alone, disguised in simple robes, and asked only to see her granddaughter. Ziraeth was hesitant at first. Her mother had never defended her, never stood up for her during all the years of mockery. But Lisa convinced her that people could change, that maybe seeing what Ziraeth had become might open her mother's eyes. The meeting was awkward and emotional, Sevara held baby Kira and wept. "I am sorry," she told her daughter. "I failed you. I was too afraid of your father's anger to protect you. But seeing you now, seeing what you have built, I realize how wrong we all were." "I cannot change the past," Ziraeth said carefully, "but perhaps we can build something better for the future." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. The research institute that Lisa and Ryan established became a hub for interspecies cooperation. They discovered that humans were indeed compatible with over 40 different species, though not all combinations would result in viable offspring. The ethical guidelines they established became a model for the entire galaxy. Other human-alien couples began forming, each one carefully documented and supported. Some were political marriages like Jake and Ziraeth had been, but many were simply people who had fallen in love across species lines. Each child born from these unions was celebrated as a bridge between worlds. The Velkari Empire slowly began to change. The lower castes, emboldened by Ziraeth's example, demanded reforms. It would take generations to fully dismantle the rigid caste system, but the cracks had formed. Emperor Thaxavan was forced to grant concessions, to recognize rights he had long denied. His power was no longer absolute. 2 years after Kira's birth, Jake and Ziraeth stood in their garden, watching their daughter take her first steps. She toddled between them, laughing with delight, her scales shimmering in the light of New Olympia's twin suns. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "Everything that happened? All the chaos and danger?" Ziraeth looked at him, then at their daughter. "Never. They sent me away as garbage, as a joke to humiliate your species, but in doing so, they gave me everything I never knew I needed: a home, a purpose, love, and this beautiful child." "The joke was definitely on them," Jake agreed with a smile. "Indeed it was." Ziraeth took his hand. "They tried to prove I was worthless. Instead, they proved that worth isn't measured by what others tell us we are. It's measured by who we choose to become." Kira stumbled and fell, then immediately got back up with determination. Both her parents laughed, recognizing that stubborn strength. She would grow up knowing both her heritages, the best of both worlds. She would never be told she was broken or worthless. She would know that being different was something to celebrate, not hide. News arrived that morning of 3 more human-alien couples announcing pregnancies. The Institute was overwhelmed with requests for consultation and research. Humanity had become the unexpected bridge builders of the galaxy, not through military might or technological superiority, but through their simple ability to connect across boundaries that others thought impossible. Jake picked up his daughter and held her close. "You know what the amazing thing is? We still don't fully understand why human genetics work this way. Lisa has theories about evolutionary adaptation, about Earth's harsh history forcing flexibility. But the truth is, we're just lucky." "Or perhaps it was always meant to be," Ziraeth said, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Perhaps some species are meant to be conquerors or explorers or builders, and perhaps humans are meant to be bridge builders, the ones who show that differences can be strengths, not weaknesses." In the distance, they could see ships landing at the spaceport. More delegations, more species, more opportunities for connection and understanding. The galaxy was changing, slowly but surely, and it had all started with one princess whom everyone had thought was worthless. Ziraeth looked up at the sky, thinking about her father and the court that had mocked her. She hoped they were watching. She hoped they could see what their discarded daughter had become, what she had helped create, not through traditional power or conquest, but through courage, love, and the simple refusal to accept that she was broken. The cruel joke had become the foundation for a new era, and in the end, the punchline was the most beautiful thing imaginable: hope, family, and proof that no one is ever truly worthless. Sometimes you just need to find the right place, the right person, who can see what you really are. Kira reached up and touched her mother's face, babbling in a mixture of sounds from both languages. Ziraeth kissed her daughter's forehead and smiled. She had found her place. She had found her worth. And she had helped change the galaxy along the way. Not bad for someone who was supposed to be a joke.